Hi, everyone. I hope you all are doing well. I decided to come for a book review. And so today's book review, I actually have three. I want to go with the one that I liked the most, Amari. Can you see? Okay, here we go. Amari and the Night Brothers. And it's by B.B. Alston. I love, oh gosh, I love this book so much. I really, really do. I really, really do. It's a young adult book. And it's a brand new author. His name, like I said, B.B. Alston. And the sequel's going to be coming out in August. It was supposed to, I think, originally come out in April. And let me see. I can't think of the title. Like, I'd have to look up the title as a sequel. But the best way to describe this book, it is a mix of Harry Potter. It's like it's really like another version of Harry Potter, but in the way that like there's a school. Okay, so there's a school for people who are like special and they do powers, but like there's secret, I would say secret, like I wouldn't say magic, but secret different creatures. So like the leprechauns and all that stuff. And so like this secret world, and they have this agency. It's almost so to me, I find it as like a PG version of the Umbrella Academy mixed with Harry Potter. Such a good book. I mean, such a good book. Please. Such a good book. So, and I like so recommend it. It's a young adult. I literally sat and read it in a couple of days because I'm busy. But and because it's also 400 pages, so I just want to let you know, like a little over 400 pages. So it's a pretty big book, but the print's really big, so it's not terrible to get through. But I just think it has a really fun story, and of course it has a diverse cast, but the lead is a little black girl, and it's a black with a black brother. And I just think it's pretty cool. I really highly encourage you to go pick it up. Okay, my next book is Tristan Strong by Kwame Mabali. And let me tell you, I like the fact that Rick Riordan is what he's insanely popular for is Percy Jackson series. And there's 2 movies that have been made from Percy Jackson series, which is a really tough sell because and actually I think they're doing a series on Disney Plus, which I will watch. I have to admit to you that I took Latin in high school. My mother's a Latin major. I have always, even as a young little kid, had a huge affinity to Greek mythology. And so I am one of those people who just love Greek mythology. And so when I was in high school and college and grad school, and you read like all of the Greek, if you read Homer, and you read, just anything with the classics, I kind of already knew where it was going because I used to watch like anything pertaining to the gods. I was there. So Xena, anything. And so anything pertaining to the gods, anything reading, like I have gone to the I've gone to the where have I gone? I have gone to the museum, the museum for in California. There's a museum, the Getty Villa. I have never gone to I hate to say this, but I've never gone to the regular Getty. And of course, that's like the more modern one. And I do need to go, but I just haven't gone. And because every time the opportunity comes, I'm like, yes, let's go to the Getty Villa. I mean, I have gone there so many times and I just love the Getty Villa. It's just, anyway, so I say all that to say, Rick Riordan wrote this book series and I've only read one series. I mean, I have his other series and I was like, he writes so much, I can't keep up. And I needed a break. And so I was like, I think it's kind of cool that what Rick Riordan is doing he is using his pull with Disney to launch different other young people or young authors, new authors under his wing. And so it's called the Rick Riordan Presents, which I think is a fabulous idea. My only hesitation with this is that Tristan Strong Punches a Hole in the Sky is an innovative idea because what he's doing is taking Black folklore and creating this mythology kind of struggle with the same way that Rick Riordan does it with the gods is the way that Tristan's kind of doing this with Black folk stories. And so the big one would be John Henry, and which makes sense because like John Henry would be like the version of Zeus. And then you have all of these other, kind of characters, and Briar Rabbit, for example. And it's okay. First of all, it's a young adult book. I get it. And it's long. So we're looking at 480 something pages. And I think it's going to be either 3 or 4 books. I don't dislike it. I just find that it can be a bit kind of, the story was kind of hard for me to kind of keep up with. And part of it, I think, is because I'm just not familiar enough with, I think when you have to deal with kind of creating a folklore story of folklore that's popular, the folklore characters I'm familiar with. But like Briar Rabbit that's a familiar story. And so I'm stuck when it comes to trying to create this mythology surrounding it, because I would have imagined that you need to create kind of like a very simplistic notion of this story. And I think that's what made Rick Riordan's work better, because Rick Riordan had a very simplistic story. Now, granted, all of the characters, all of the mythology, he does try to give you a glimpse of trying to explain that. And then there's a lot of Greek mythology characters, but I'm familiar with both of the characters. But the thing is, Riordan doesn't really introduce a lot of other characters that are not part of the gods. Whereas Tristan Strong, they don't really they introduce some characters that are not God related. And so then it kind of makes this mythology a little bit difficult to follow. And then it's kind of like Alice in Wonderland like. So it's a bit of a harder read. I'm not saying that I wouldn't recommend it. I would say that you just have to give yourself some patience to kind of get through this, because I think that the story is it's unnecessarily complicated. And it also made assumptions that the readers would know who these characters are. Like Reardon did not make any assumptions about that anybody knew any of his characters, even though they're more popular, because he'd give like a couple of sentences in the dialogue that let you know who this person was. We don't have that in this book. So you really do need to be like, okay, so why is John Henry so, like you'd walk away and you still don't understand why John Henry and his hammer is so significant. And I think that's a fail because you're trying to introduce something that's popular. Let me explain this for 2 seconds. John Henry and his hammer is insanely popular to me and my parents, right? It is not insanely popular to my kids, to the demographic for this book. And let me tell you why. Because you don't see John Henry's story John Henry's story has been portrayed on television and cartoons and stuff, and all that stuff doesn't come on regular TV anymore. It doesn't really come on. So it's not a part of the folklore. There's not as many books. There's not a lot of mention of John Henry anymore. And absolutely Briar Rabbit. Like, I mean, heck, Bugs Bunny is not, which is a descendant of Briar Rabbit. Okay, just FYI. Bugs Bunny is not popular. Bugs Bunny doesn't even have his own show anymore. So you really have to have a blurb in this conversation. Like, why in the world is John Henry such a huge folklore in Black folklore to the point that he's on top of the kill as the king, like Zeus is? You got to explain that. Like, that awe. Why is he so in awe? And I think that the generation who's supposed to be reading this would not understand why he's so much more in awe, like why people should be in awe of him. And I think that's the key. Anyway, so I know his next book is out. I got his book in the back. I'll come back to you next week, and because I'll read it next week because I'm going to be reading a bunch of other stuff. But I'm also going to be, I promised myself that I'm rewarding myself with reading more books. But the way that I'm going to be rewarding myself is through writing a chapter. So I have a couple chapters that I'm going to write this week, and in a book. So like a couple of books. So I'm just trying to, because I need to set some deadlines, and then I have some stuff that I have to go to a couple of conferences. Both of them are in March, and so I have to plan and write these papers. I got like 3 papers to write. So anywho, the other Black girl. Okay, so this is the popular one by Miss Harris, The Other Black Girl. Okay. I'm gonna tell you what I appreciated. I appreciated the fact that we're addressing publishing and I say this as an author. Publishing is so white facing, and I think there is an active intent to not make it so white facing. But on the other hand, there's curated content, and because it's white facing, there's this curated content, curated narrative. And the best way that I can describe this as an example is I watched The Underground Railroad on Amazon Prime, and it was infuriating to me. The depiction, like, I am one of those people that feel like, if you ask me how many shows do we need to talk about the civil rights movement, how many you got? If you ask me how many shows do you want to talk about slavery, and I'm like, how many shows do they talk about with the Holocaust? A couple comes out a year. Okay, I want a couple that comes out for slavery. How many do you want to talk about the Reconstruction? How many are there? Like, I feel like there's never enough stories to talk about Black folks' pain and triumph. However, the lens in which you do is important to me. And I know that the Underground Railroad is written by a Black man, and I understand that the Underground Railroad is directed by a Black man, but the level of but you realize instantly, and I sat there, and I'm gonna say I watched all 10 episodes. Yes, I did. So I'm not just gonna complain. I watched all 10 episodes because I want to thoroughly say how much I hated the show. And I hated the show because, yes, there were some Black people who were bounty hunters. Yes, there were some Black folks who wanted to, who was, on the side of, white slave, hunter slave, that beat Blacks on the slave plantation. Absolutely. There were Black folks who were all up under white folks, who were racist, subservient. I am there with you. I know it has happened. I know it did happen. I understand that. But the fact that you are going to build a whole program off of exploiting the subservient nature of Black folks is offensive. And then the way that you depict the Underground Railroad as like being a railroad, and you look at the portrayal of, there are some moments that I thought about. I was like, in 2022, it is hard to, as a Black woman, it is hard to trust a white person. I get that. So in the 1800s, while you're trying to escape slavery, is it difficult to trust a white person who says, I can help you? Absolutely, because you're thinking, this person is going to get me killed. I appreciate that the woman is walking around saying the same offensive language in which they called her kids, called the kids. So she's using these terms, which I'm not even going to use because I don't like it. So I get it. But the way that and the thing is that to me, the acting wasn't all that good. And so the way that they're depicting how it wasn't like, you don't get the sense that white people enjoyed, which I'm sure they did, abusing Black folks. That's not, because the acting's not that good. But you clearly see that this Underground Railroad was not meant for me to watch. And I think I'm too, and I don't want to shoot my horn here, but I'm too educated to watch this blasphemy of a show. And there's some times where there's a responsibility of, is it entertainment? Absolutely. But also entertainment, now I'm sounding like Socrates. Entertainment, this entertainment is harmful. And I refuse to believe that my ancestors who were able to, who did whatever to survive, were this meek. And I know it's fiction, but this passive, docile, it was disgusting to watch. And thus, even though it was a Black writer, Black book, Black movie, Black director, it is nominated. People are saying how beautiful this show is. I don't understand how they can say that. But this is the point that I'm bringing up, is that the other Black girl kind of touches upon how stuff is curated. And I appreciate what the author is doing. Put a pin on that. Even though I appreciate it, I don't particularly care for the book. I think that the book was, I mean, to me, I don't think that the plot twists were all that plot twisty. I was waiting for the book to and it took me forever to finish it. And usually, like when stuff kind of drags, it takes me a while to finish, and it's frustrating because I am a fast reader. But I just struggle with it, and I didn't see the fascination that all of you that other people have. I do, though, understand being the only one in the workplace or one of the only ones, and you see somebody else, and it's the same thing. Like if you've watched Big Brother, and how it's like it was all the Black folks, and they really distinguish it by trying to make all the Black folks so different. Like one was, adopted and raised by white folks. Another one was mixed and went to Howard, like she's Indian and Black. Another one was Afro Latino. Like, so all of them, and another one was just like around the way, regular Black woman, whatever. And another one was from immigrant parents that came from Africa. So they tried to do all of this. So then people who are outside of the Black community would be like, oh, they're not working together because they're not black, right? Like, but whereas with them, they came in the room and was like, how many Black folks are here? Ooh, we forming like Voltron. And we're going to stick together. And that is what happens when we're in these all white spaces. And so I appreciate that depiction as well. But whatever it is, even still, when you're picked into being in these white spaces, you're curated to be in these spaces. And I think that that's even more fascinating. Like you're picked specifically. So they don't just want any Black person. It's, I am selecting this Black person, and then we'll see how this goes, right? And that's I don't know if it's fascinating or disheartening or what, but that's kind of how this cookie crumbles. But I don't know. I am just not a fan. I thought it was an okay book, but the book was pretty long for it to just be kind of this okay book. It's like $3.50 something. And then if you bought the book from Barnes and Noble, they give you some extra content. For what? Those extra content pages told me nothing I wanted to know. Anywho, that's my book review. Have a great rest of your day.